but I would sneak out of work on a dinner break when everybody else was going to dinner. I would get in a town car and I'd like change in the car, try to look a little bit more downtown, take my tie off and my suit coat off and my $3,000 suit and take my expensive watch off and put it in my bag. And I'd have the car drop me like 2 blocks from this, because these were dive bars, like in the East Village, and I would go and I'd pick a number, an open mic night, and I'd wait to do 5 minutes of stand-up, and then I'd get in the car and dress back up and go back to work.
Welcome to Second Act Stories, a podcast that profiles people who have made major life and career changes and are pursuing more rewarding lives in a second act. I'm your host today, Scott Merritt.
And I'm Scott's co-host, Andy Levine. Scott, tell us about your interview with Paul Mecurio.
Sure. I mean, when I say captivating, I mean I was entranced. Paul was an attorney who graduated from Georgetown. He took a job on Wall Street. He was an investment banker. And as you can imagine, he was living the life that everybody thinks they want to live. But comedy became such a strong calling for him at some point that after a chance meeting with Jay Leno, he left that high-paying gig behind to pursue that passion.
Tell us about his credentials in the field of comedy.
So Paul went on to become one of the original writers on The Daily Show, which, by the way, earned him an Emmy Award. He's currently a writer on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and he's even an opinion contributor to one of my favorite shows, CBS Sunday Morning.
All right, let's hear the interview.
I was born and raised in the woods by a pack of wolves. And then, I'm from Providence, Rhode Island, Italian neighborhood, North End, called Charles Street is where I grew up, in a very Italian neighborhood. And all I knew until I went to high school in a different part of the city at 13, I just thought everybody was Italian and ate a lot of carbs and had puffy hair and, tight pants and drove shiny cars. And then I realized, oh Christ, there's Irish people and Jewish people and black people and everything else. So Providence, and my wife is from there too. We went to high school together.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
What'd you want to do when you grew up?
I wanted to be a carpenter. I loved carpentry work because I think I'm Jesus Christ. I have a complex. Some would say I can float on water, which is like walking on water. Similar.
Right. So, were you funny as a kid?
I was funny, but just with my family. We would go on family trips, and I was the youngest, and I would make my brother and sister and my mother and father laugh and stuff like that. I do funny voices and things like that. And then when I got into later, I always loved watching stand-up comedians on late night TV. So I would watch them and then go into school at high school, and I'd start doing their jokes. I do Rodney Dangerfield jokes or whatever and just get laughs, but never thought that I'd be doing it professionally or anything like that.
So what did you study when you went off to college?
Disappointing my parents. It's a major, very specific. You got to really concentrate on it. I was an accounting major. I grew up in a family business. I was an economics and accounting major, so I thought I would do something in business, and then decided I want to be a lawyer. I would go to law school and do business law, corporate law, some kind, securities law, and so after going to undergrad, I went to Georgetown Law School.
What appealed to you about law?
I feel I think I like debate, I was in debate on the debate club in college. I like conversation. I think because I grew up in a family business, and my parents and my mother had me selling furniture when I was a kid, to adults. So there's sort of a gift for gab kind of thing that just happened naturally. So I was like, okay, well, if I want to do corporate law, I should go to New York because that's the epicenter for corporate law. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this for 30 years, and then I'm going to retire to Florida, right, like every other Italian or Jewish person that and then boom, and then I'm done, right? That was the plan.
So how long did you practice law before investment banking started emerging?
I did Well, I was working with investment bankers a lot on these. I was doing M&A deals and mergers and acquisitions. And sometimes people ask me, like, well, what is mergers and acquisitions? The way I liken it's like when you eat, you have a salad and you have your steak and you chew that and mash that all together. That's the acquisition. And then later you take a really huge crap. That's the merger. And I was the colon. It all went through me. And I'm a human colon, everybody. I want to say 3-4 years in, I was like, doing a lot of interesting deals, and they liked me at the law firm, and I was getting a lot of good work, and I was working with senior people at the firm. But I thought, well, maybe I want to try the investment banking. And so I made a switch over. But at that same time, well, actually going back to like law school, I had been writing comedy and sketches and stuff like that. But I didn't know why or what I was going to do with them. I was just writing them. I was living in a little one-room basement apartment on Capitol Hill. It was like, they called it a garden apartment, which basically was like one room. I don't know if I can swear on this, but one room shithole. So I was living there, and I would lie in bed at night. I remember, taking a break from studying, and I'd be writing jokes and sketch ideas. But I didn't know what I was going. I don't know why. Up to that point, whenever I did something, I had a plan, a focus, a purpose, and a set of steps that I'd put in place, and I'd do them. I want to major in business. I want to go to law school. I want to do corporate life, blah, 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 blah. This was just like, I don't know, and I just would write them down. And then they were just sitting there.
So what did you ultimately do? Did you just have a big box full of ideas and written material?
I had them on a computer, and I just kept them. And then I started to write jokes, like monologue jokes, like you see on the late night shows. Right. But again, it wasn't like, with a purpose, or a plan. I just was like writing these things. I mean, nobody in my family is in the entertainment business, and the thought of leaving, it didn't even enter my mind that I would leave Wall Street to do anything else. I mean, I was making good money on my own apartment on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Yeah. Like, I was set,
Right. So was there always a sense, though, that comedy would somehow be an important part of your life?
Mm-mm. No. What ended up happening was I was at the law firm, and we had gotten invited to a private function that a company that we worked with was hosting, and Jay Leno was the private entertainment. And so I went up to Jay. I wasn't going to go because I was so busy, and at the last minute I just was like, I'll go. And I stood up, I put my overcoat on, and I remember I had my keyboard there and my computer, and I went, what the hell, why not? And I hit the print button, and I printed out all these jokes that I had. And I said to myself, well, I'll give them to Jay Leno if I can go approach him, and then maybe he'll use them or something.
Right.
But it wasn't like I'm going to go to Jay, and then Jay's going to hire me, and then I'm going to leave, and then I'm going to be a comedian, and then I'm going to win Emmy Awards and all that other stuff. So I went, and he performed, and then I went up to him, and I just said, hey, I don't know if you need jokes, but I'm a fan of yours. I watch you on The Tonight Show, and I'm a lawyer, and I'm never going to use these, and you can have them. And he was like, okay, which was really hilarious. I had to not laugh because he really did. It was like, and I always joke like it sounded like, when you let air out of a balloon, like, it was like that. You just want to go to him like, breathe, just breathe. Your head's going to explode. And I was so nervous. And it's so funny because here I am like Mr. Wall Street doing sophisticated deals. And he goes, hey, you may want to come back. I go, what? He goes, you might want to put your name and your phone number on here so I know how to reach you. I was like, so he took them and he was nice. And I thought, well, okay, these are just going to be on a garbage barge to, wherever, right? And then a couple of days later, my phone rang. This is all true. And I hear, it's Jay Leno, is Paul there? And I thought it was a prank call, like a buddy of mine who does, right?
Of course.
Because it's like, Jay's never, and I go, what? He goes, yeah, it's Jay Leno. I go, yeah, right. And he goes, no, really? And I go, yeah, I got a friend, I thought it was my friend David who does like impressions just as a joke. And I go, yeah, really funny, David, because I told him I met Leno. He goes, no, it's really Jay Leno. And I go, stop it, I'm busy. He goes, no, it is. And I actually said to Jay Leno, well, you know what, buddy? You do a lousy Jay Leno. That's what I said to him. And he's like, oh, what? I think I do a pretty good me. I'm like, oh, shit, it's Jay Leno. And he said, I read your stuff and I need stuff for the Tonight Show monologue. So I'll hire you as like a freelance writer and I'll pay you $50 per joke that I use. And he goes, don't leave your job. Just send jokes in when you come up. And there's no pressure. If you don't have to, it's not weekly, whatever you.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay. And I'm like, now I'm stunned. And I'm like, he goes, by the way, what do you do for a living? I go, I'm a lawyer. He goes, I knew it. I go, why? He goes, you write like a lawyer. You're way too wordy. He goes, you're writing a joke, not the Magna Carta. Get to the punchline already, for Christ's sake. Because I would have like 4 lines of setup for like one little punchline.
Right.
I was even giving him stage direction, like make funny face here. You know, like he goes, I know when to make a funny face. So so I started, sending stuff in, and and then a little time went by, and then he called me one day, and he goes, "It's Jay, I'm going to do one of your jokes on the Tonight Show tonight." And I'm like, "Why are you calling me? Don't you have an assistant who has an assistant?" He goes, I like to keep in touch with it. I'm like, okay. I go, well, you're really annoying me. I'm busy, Jay. No, I said, and then he did the joke. And I got a bottle of champagne, and I went to a friend's apartment with my girlfriend, now my wife, at 81st and Central Park West. They had a little apartment, and we put the Tonight Show on, and he did my joke. And it got a really nice laugh. And it was incredibly powerful. Like, it just blew my head off my shoulders. It was $50. I was spending $50 on lunch. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, the money was like, but the power of creating something from nothing and then hearing people react to it, I think what happened too was I was always advising on other people's deals, but they weren't my creation, and it really just like grabbed me. And then I started like obsessively, like I would take 2 notebooks to deal meetings, and one was for deals and one was for jokes, and I wasn't taking any deal notes. I was just observing and taking joke notes. And so that is kind of how it started. And then he said to me, you can try the jokes out before you send them to me. And I go, how do you do that? He goes, well, you can go to these open mic nights, bars around New York City that have these little rooms in the back. Right. So I started to do that, and I started to live this like secret double life where I was a lawyer, investment banker. And in the midst of this, I made the shift over to investment banking, but I'm still doing M&A deals on Wall Street. Right. Still working crazy hours, but I would sneak out of work on a dinner break when everybody else was going to dinner. I would get in a town car, and I'd like change in the car, try to look a little bit more downtown, take my tie off and my suit coat off and my $3,000 suit, and take my expensive watch off and put it in my bag. And I'd have the car drop me like 2 blocks from this, because these were dive bars, like in the East Village, and I would go and I'd pick a number, an open mic night, and I'd wait to do 5 minutes of stand-up, and then I'd get in the car and dress back up and go back to work. And one of the places I worked was called Downtown Beirut 2 was the name of the place. Okay. And so one night I was waiting to go on stage, and there was a folk singer on stage playing Blowing in the Wind, like badly, like just, like badly, like worse than Bob Dylan's voice, right? And then all of a sudden there's a scuffle at the pool table, and a guy grabs the side of his neck and he starts screaming, "He cut me, man, he cut me." And his blood started coming out of the side of his neck, and they got in a fight over a drug deal, and this guy with a box cutter cut him on the side of the neck. And the guy just keeps playing. Like, he's not getting off, right? Because he's been waiting like 2 months probably to get stage time.
This is his 5 minutes.
This is right, exactly. So I think, okay, well, the show's over, and I'm supposed to go next. And so I go on, and I'm starting to leave, and then all of a sudden I hear the host, the MC, go, "All right, you guys ready for some comedy?" So I go on stage, and I said, "Well, it's really great to be here at Downtown Beirut 2. I always wanted to follow a slashing." So the guy who got cut heard me say that, and he's like, "Hey, you making fun of me?" And he had all these like white little cocktail napkins that he was pressing against his neck, and they were all bloody. And he took them and he threw them at me, and they hit me in my shirt, my white Brooks Brothers shirt. Now I'm like 3 hours past when I'm supposed to be at the firm. Nobody can find me.
Right.
I didn't have time to go home to change my shirt. I put my suit jacket back on, my tie, and I take a file folder and I think, well, I'll just hide. I had like the size of a baseball or grapefruit-sized blood stain right up my rib cage on my shirt. So I figured between my suit coat and a file folder, I'll just walk around with like a file folder up against my rib cage and no one will notice this grapefruit-sized blood stain.
Right.
Well, I walk into the conference room and the senior partner, who's never there past 6 o'clock, it's like midnight now, he goes, "Where have you been? What have you been doing? Why do you have a blood stain on your shirt?" Like within seconds, he spotted it. And then I was like, okay, see, if the firm knew that I was doing this, they would say, this is not acceptable. This is a very white shoe,
Right.
top 5 in the world law firm. This is not what we do. This is not how we want our lawyers to represent this firm.
Right.
So now I'm like, oh God, here it comes. I'm gonna be outed on this. And I didn't know what, he goes, why do you have what's going on? Are you bleeding? Are you bleeding? I didn't know what to say. And then one of the other lawyers goes, there's like 12 lawyers, bankers in the room. He goes, what kind of shirt is that? I go, it's a Brooks Brothers shirt. Why? He goes, oh, I know how to get blood out of a Brooks Brothers shirt. He goes, club soda and lemon juice. And then another lawyer goes, no, Armani, that's the shirt you want. And I'm like, are you guys remaking American Psycho in your spare time? How do you know so much about blood and shirts and everything else? And that became my life, and so I kept it from everybody, and I was having a nervous breakdown because I couldn't let people in comedy know that I was this guy from Wall Street because they wouldn't take me seriously, and then they'd start asking me for money and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was really like closeted, and it was really like freaking me out.
So let's go back to the moment that you decided to hand this sheet of jokes to Jay Leno.
Yeah.
That sounds like it's a really transformative moment in your life.
Yeah, I guess I made a decision then that I didn't realize I made, which is that I really wanted to do this full time, but I didn't think that way. I just thought, I'll just give him these jokes and it'd be cool to see one of my jokes. I started to look at this as like, okay, some lawyers or bankers golf or travel as a hobby. I'll write and tell jokes. That'll be my hobby.
So then you see the joke on TV, and suddenly you got the juice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about how
and that's a great word because it was like a drug, and I wanted more of the drug. I wanted to see another joke of mine being told.
Right.
But then when I started to tell them, I was getting the laughs, and that was like a whole other level of like, holy shit. Because now I wrote it, thought of it from nothing, wrote it from nothing, told it, and I got. So then I got the
desired
laugh.
response.
Yeah. And
so let's talk about that. That ultimately leads to a moment that you decide to leave law and do comedy full time. So you leave a solid career with high earning potential, and a good future.
Yeah.
Right, for something that is extremely low probability.
Yeah.
How many people told you were crazy?
I told my wife, I think I want to leave Wall Street to be a comedian. She said, that better be your first joke. That's what she said to me, which is one of the best lines ever.
And you're the comedian.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I said, that's my job. Back off. And I basically, she said to me, you work so hard to get to Wall Street. Do you really want to start over again? That was kind of the big response from people. And some people, I think, were, it's funny, the Wall Street people were really supportive, which surprised me. I was really scared to tell them. But a lot of them were like, well, good for you, because a good number of them were, I think, had felt like they had settled. Like, even though they were making really good money and high-powered jobs, they weren't doing exactly what they maybe wanted to do, but now they were married with kids and they got the house and the this and that and the second house, and so they were locked in and they couldn't go back and do something else. So there was a mixed thing, but it was a really hard decision. It was scary because I'm gonna, like you said, I had security and I was set, and I'm gonna give all this up and start over again. And I didn't realize until I got into it just how much starting over again it was. Like really, really basement, below basement, subterranean, Dante's Inferno, 7 Rings of Hell down. I had to start to get back up to anywhere near where I was on Wall Street. So you're like, yeah, well, went to law school, and I went to college, and I graduated 10th in my class, and I graduated nice law school with honors, and I got a big job. Everything I do, I achieve at a high level, so this will be quick. Boom, the next thing you know, I'll have a TV show in 5 years or whatever. Yeah, well, it doesn't work that way, but I also think that's good, because if you let safety get in your way and fear of not having money, then people wouldn't achieve great things. You know what I mean? You play it safe, and then you don't end up achieving something special or unique that's unique to you. But it was a hard decision to actually do it. But I had to make a decision one way or the other, because I was having a nervous breakdown, because I couldn't keep these 2 lives going, let alone try to keep them separate from each other.
You know, it's one thing to be the funniest lawyer.
Right. Right.
Right. But how do you parlay that into, finding success?
Yeah, being the funniest lawyer is like saying you're the sexiest IT guy, Yeah, I mean, I wasn't very good as a stand-up. I wasn't like, this genius prodigy that whatever that people discovered. I was serviceable in the beginning as a comedian. But yeah, it was not like, I want people to listening to be clear about this. It wasn't like, I just woke up one day and whatever. I was really wringing my hands like, am I going to do this? Am I going to do this? Am I going to do this? I'm scared. And then once I did it, I was really scared, and I felt like I made a huge mistake.
There must have been a flashpoint, though, at some point along the way where you declared to yourself or to others that, okay, I've made it for comedy.
Yeah, but I mean, it was a roller coaster, But I sold my apartment in the city and moved to a rooming house in New Rochelle, $327 a month, and I had a 10 by 12 room with a single bed and a hot pot on the floor, and I had a pre-war doorman building on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, I had to sell it because I couldn't afford. I wasn't getting paid enough as a comic to support my lifestyle. And then one of the inflection points was a buddy of mine had bought it. All my buddies on Wall Street were now moving up the food chain. Their houses were getting bigger and bigger. Their cars were getting bigger and nicer. And I was regressing. I was down living in this dive place. And I was running a race with myself that I was never going to win, because I started putting this pressure on myself. Like, I got to make it big fast. Because I gave up all this stuff. Look at what my friends at Wall Street have. I could have that. I should have that. And so I went to my friend's house. He bought a new house in Greenwich, and it was so big and beautiful. And I could have had something like that. I remember going in his bathroom and just sitting down, putting my head in my hands and going, what have I done? I could have had this. What have I got to go back? I got to go back. And I couldn't stay at the party. I had to leave. And I was getting more and more depressed. A buddy of mine was starting a new department at an investment bank, and he said, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm trying this comedy thing, but I'm not too happy. And he goes, well, I need some help. You can make some quick money. Do you want to come? And I go, I don't know. He goes, no, you should come, interview. You can maybe come back into banking. So I went out, and because I had sold all my suits, and I bought a suit, and I was standing on the platform at New Rochelle Metro North train station, 8 o'clock and 7:30 in the morning. And I look to my left and my right, and there's 40 other guys in navy blue suits with a Wall Street Journal under, looking exactly like me, and I'm going in for an interview for a job I don't even know that I want. And I get multiple interviews, and I get a job offer. And then I have 2 weeks to decide. And I was frozen. What am I going to do? I didn't know what to. I was scared to death. I was lost, because I'd never been lost before. I didn't feel like I belonged in comedy. I didn't feel like I belonged on Wall Street. And it was the scariest time in my life, because I felt like I had no purpose. And I'd never been like that. I had always been very structured, goal-oriented, with a plan. And now I was just I kind of felt like I had these 2 howitzers of talent and work ethic, and they were loaded and ready to shoot, and I didn't know where to shoot them. And it's a really scary place to be. And so I take every minute of the 2 weeks to decide on the job offer, and then I call and I accept it. And then I called my girlfriend, who was living in Boston at the time, and I started crying on the phone like a baby. She goes, well, are you crying because you're happy and relieved? And I said, I just took a really intense M&A investment banking job with a major Wall Street firm, and I know I shouldn't be there, but I don't know what to do. And I know with comedy, I'm miserable. And I took it. I was crying like a baby. So I moved my wife, the girlfriend, down, moved back into Manhattan, recreated my life on Wall Street, got a new, nice apartment, new suits, so swore off comedy. I'm not even going to watch it. I'm not going to write it. I'm not going to perform it. I'm not going to go near a club. And I started being an investment banker. And then 3 months in, I was back in the clubs doing comedy again, like an alcoholic who needed a drink. And so then I stayed a little while longer, and then I left again to go back into comedy full time, moved again to a cheaper apartment.
Did you learn anything from the first go at comedy that taught you what not to do? And did you do anything differently?
It was to not run this race that I was never going to win, which was, I got to get there. I got to make a lot of money. I got to get a big TV show. I got to be huge, because I could have been a big time Wall Street partner somewhere, because that was just going to kill. I was going to, it's like putting a bullet in my head. Mm-hmm. In terms of the technical aspects of comedy, I was learning the craft, how to perform and have confidence, write better jokes, write jokes that are more personal to me. Yes, but there were bigger life lessons that I had to learn, that if I didn't learn them, I couldn't function as a comedian. I would end up just going literally insane, because I was so wrapped up. It was really hard for me to see my friends getting all these nice things, and I was sacrificing all of that for my art, or whatever you want to call it,
right,
for a bigger picture that I had for myself. And so what I had to learn from the first time around was I got to do it with a clearer conscience and just really go for it, and not. I was going for it the first time. It wasn't like I was laying around in bed just not doing it. I was working very hard at it, but I was dragging a 2-ton truck of agita and guilt and feeling bad about myself and jealousy and envy and want, and that makes it really hard to function.
So fast forward now, some of your credits, right? You were on The Daily Show.
Yeah.
Writer, performer.
Yeah.
You're now working for Late Show, Stephen Colbert.
Yeah, I worked on the Colbert Report before that. Yeah. And I'm really proud of The Daily Show, because I was part of the original group of creative people that helped create the voice of the show. I mean, before John came on board, Jon Stewart.
Craig Kilborn.
Yeah, and that ended up, fair to say, being one of the seminal shows, I think, in television in the last 25 years.
Sure.
I couldn't say that if I was still on Wall Street, you know what I mean? So, and I got awards for it, and big awards and everything, Emmy, Peabody Award and all that stuff. And and so it'd be, in a perfect world, you go, oh, I know that this was the right decision and whatever. But when you start to get those credits and get awards like that, it's good. It kind of helps put a stamp of approval on your decision. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, the other part of it is the stability, right, that comes with having a staff job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. But I was still doing stand-up, and then that, and acting, and then that turned into my being a regular commentator on the cable news shows, MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, because I was doing, topical political satire on The Daily Show, so it was perfect to put me on a panel.
Right.
And then started to get TV credits and TV appearances and my own special and be in movies, and so it started to kind of build,
So you gave yourself the grace to make it the second time.
Yeah, grace is a good way of putting it. Yeah. And my wife is the coolest person I'll ever know, because she never complained about, we could have had this, or I want that, or whatever. She just she her background is museums and museum studies, so she was a big believer and patron of the arts. So she just wanted me to be happy, you know. And it was hard sometimes to be happy when I was beating myself up for my decision. Like I was fighting it, and it was hard. That's like why I was losing sleep at night, and I was
Right.
scared. But once the Daily Show happened, and then other things started to come from that, you start to go, okay, well, I'm not just a professional and making money now, but I'm on, I'm on TV. I'm part of television, and then becomes this. Then the show became like a thing in and of itself, that had this reach. And I was in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, okay, this is pretty cool. And then the Colbert Report, and now the Late Show with Stephen Colbert. And it's so funny. When the guy whose house, that big house I went to where I was sitting in the bathroom and I couldn't, he said to me one time, he goes, man, he goes, I really envy you. He goes, you have such a cool job. You have such a cool life, the way, you get to do what you do and write and perform and blah, blah, blah. And so it's like, oh, okay. Because I was sitting on the other side of that fence envying you and your life.
Right.
And it's a very envy's a bitch, man. That's a bad place to be. And so my story I never want anybody to interpret my story as like, oh, he had a dream and he pursued it, and it was just boop boop, easy, nice and clean. It was a lot of vacillation and just a lot of angst and working through stuff. And but I guess I had to, like I don't know if I had a choice, you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, it's just proof that not every second act is a clean break, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, what am I going to do? What happened to me? I kept saying, what happened to me? How could I be so lost? But as my college advisor said, you're not lost. It's the opposite. You probably were lost when you were on Wall Street. You didn't realize it. Mm-hmm. Now you're finding your true self and where you should be.
So how did your career on Wall Street prepare you for comedy?
Well, I mean, I'm really lucky because it gave me a really good business sense, and you could see how people in the arts get taken advantage of, or just don't read contracts, don't understand contracts, get offered deals that, I've been offered deals for my own show where like I created the show and like I would end up owning 10% of it, and I turned those down with some big name people. And so I think all of that put me ahead of the curve, like, being able to kind of sniff out a bad deal or
right.
somebody that was, not on the up and up, or, approaching things a certain way. You got to have a little bit of a P.T. Barnum aspect to you. Like, you got to know how to market your product, which is me,
mm-hmm.
Whether it's little things like anything that gets put out should have my credits on it, right? Like not just my name, but my credit. And then also in writing, because when you're a lawyer, you learn how to be very detailed oriented and very specific. And a good joke is really about the more specific you can be, the better it is, because you can paint a clearer picture for the listener. So there is a parallel to legal writing and comedy writing. Because if it's just a general setup that's not very specific, the joke doesn't work. But the more specific I can make that story and paint that picture with great detailed imagery, the better.
You wound up being tapped to provide commentary to CBS Sunday Morning. It's my favorite show on TV.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is hallowed ground.
Yeah.
This is rarefied air.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
The person that is the talent for CBS News knew me from ESPN because I was going on ESPN and doing commentary, satire, like, on the panels talking sports.
Yeah.
I'm able to just take an issue in the news or in sports and just break it down and find the funny in it. There's always funny somewhere, unless it's tragic, death, really tragic stuff. And so she moved over, and she just always believed in me. She's from Laurie, Orlando, and recommended me to them as, like a young kind of voice, a little different than what they normally have. And I wrote something, and they liked it, and so now that's how it started. And I go on pretty regularly and get to, kind of when something comes up that I really want to talk about, I get to go on. And yeah, it was to see that's in one of those moments you see yourself on TV, and that was more satisfying than seeing me close a big merger deal. I'm on a show that I, like you, grew up with and loved, and I'm in it, on it, part of it.
I can't thank Paul Mecurio enough for taking the time to truly open up and share his incredible journey with me. I found it captivating that there was this inherent need he had to write jokes even when there wasn't an obvious outlet for it. And I think we all owe a collective thanks to Jay Leno for being the spark that ignited what would become Paul's illustrious comedy career. I hope you felt the drama, the stress, and the suspense of Paul's story as much as I did when I sat down and spoke to him. It was impossible for me to ignore some of what made Paul's journey so compelling. Number one, pay attention to what moves you. Even though he had no idea why, Paul wrote jokes, and he took chances to see where it would lead. And number two, speaking of chances, when Paul seized the opportunity to hand his jokes to Jay Leno, who was then hosting The Tonight Show, the path began to reveal itself, and it wound up being the catalyst for what would completely change his life. And number three, follow your heart. Even when a Wall Street job presented itself as a safety net when Paul's comedy career wasn't quite taking off, it brought him no inner peace. He only found fulfillment when he followed his heart back to the world of comedy. Andy and I are always on the lookout for new people to profile on Second Act Stories. If you'd like to suggest a candidate, we'd love to hear from you. Just visit our website at www.secondactstories.org, click on the Nominated Guest box at the top of the homepage, and submit away. We hope you'll keep listening. There are more Second Act Stories just around the corner.